So one of the common denominators is really the sameness of qualities of people drawn into these professions. So we see a really deep focus on people who have empathy. They're really holding that space with patience. There's a high level of self-awareness. You really need to have an understanding of what triggers you when you're working with others and what are your reactive states, as well as those judgment and personal biases. And so it's a pretty big list, and there's similarities and synergies between the two. Okay, so before we proceed, so that was just a little bit of theory to kind of get us going. Really, let's recap on these core concepts before we move ahead. So as we saw, psychotherapists focus more on mental health, whereas the Agile coach supports the organization as a whole to really derive value from building products. And as we saw, to achieve this, they're going to work across the organization, both vertically, horizontally, it could be with an individual, could be teams, and the enterprise as a whole. And then as we saw, there's the same soft skills. Great. Now let's head into gestalt psychotherapy. So I'm just going to give you a Coles Notes brief history before we dive in. So Gestalt philosophy was founded in Germany and Austria, harking back to around the 1920s, and it became very popular in Europe. So Fritz Perls is a German-born psychotherapist, and his wife Laura popularized Gestalt psychotherapy in the 1940s and 50s. So after the Second World War, they moved to New York City, as a lot of people did, and they started their psychotherapy practice out of their apartment, if you can imagine. And then in the early 60s, Fritz moved to Big Sur in California. And really from there, Gestalt took off like wildfire. It took off in North America, and it really continues to gain in popularity today. So this practice has certainly evolved since the 60s. And as more research unfolds in these areas, the practice continues to deepen. So that was just a little bit of background. Okay, so how do we pronounce the word? Because it's a funny word to say. I'm just going to say it for you. So gestalt. Hopefully, there's a bit of a in there. Gestalt. So it is a German word. There you go. I think I must have pressed my audio. Okay, whoops. So let's look at the definition. So gestalt simply means the whole is more important than the individual parts. And that's the most basic definition. And when we think of a human, the wholeness of a person includes the mind and body connection rather than a collection of all these different parts. So let's take a look at this from maybe another angle. So let's take a celebrity, Kim Kardashian, for example. So she's more than just a reality star. She's also a mom. She's an entrepreneur, but at her core, at her wholeness, she is a human being. So that is the definition of Gestalt.